Due to high winds and hot weather, power companies in California have been shutting down power around the state to try to avoid sparking new fires. Sacramento Bee has reported that legislation has been proposed and passed to help power companies to better control vegetation issues that are going to contribute to more fires. Hi there, Timothy Linsdau, video producer and a Christian. California here in San Diego, California. In California, it's all about fires right now. This is fire season in October, early parts of November, maybe even December. It comes from the Santa Ana winds, a high that develops, pushes hot air out of the desert in towards the coast, raises the temperatures dramatically, reduces the humidity in the air dramatically, and primes the area, already hot and dry, for incredible fire danger. Now, the feds and others are working on trying to improve laws to improve the ability for electric companies and others to do their best to reduce this fire danger. Before we start, like and comment on my videos, subscribe to my channel if you would, that'd be terrific. So what's going on? The campfire started on federal land. A rule would make Pacific Gas and Electric clean up its power lines. Now, Pacific Gas and Electric have already declared bankruptcy over this issue. Now, the campfire, as some of you may know, was one of the worst fire in California's history, killing something like 86 people and destroying 18,000 buildings, an entire town, to say the least. Now, the U.S. Forest Service is seeking to make it easier for utility companies to remove dry brush and other vegetation near power lines running through forests, such as the PG&E lines on federal land that sparked the deadly campfire last year. Now, the agency, of course, which is part of the Department of Agriculture, announced a proposed regulation last week that would require utilities to specify their plans for clearing brush and other vegetation around power lines that run through national forests. The regulation also would demand that utilities provide a timeline for brush clearing projects. Now, you know, amazingly, they did some research with native tribes and discovered that they actually would burn underbrush in the forest because the green grass and shrubs, low shrubs, would come back quickly and provide feed for wild animals and food for the native tribes. So they actually practiced a form of gardening and fire prevention in the forest, maybe for centuries before we came along. Now, Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest gas and electricity provider in Northern California, has been blamed for igniting dozens of blazes with poorly cared for electric line. With the campfire and so forth, they declared bankruptcy just to survive, and politicians trying to decide what to do. Now, this prompted members of Congress to add language to the 2018 Farm Bill to encourage more aggressive management of so-called utility corridors. Now, areas of the forest where utilities have been granted access to run power lines. Now, the goal is to clear overgrown underbrush, dead and dying trees, which are downed or faulty power lines that can easily catch on fire. And that complaint has been going on for some time about a lack of forest management. In the past, I believe it was President Clinton that passed some restrictions on forest land not to harvest, but it may have set up a condition where people just were afraid to even touch it. One of the problems you have in a developed country like this, and maybe even California in particular, you can have a different agency or different landowner for every mile or more, or less. So everything has to be worked through. It's not so easy. Some years ago, I made a film on Otay Mountain, and the Border Patrol took me through a particular gate. And on that gate was a chain with dozens of padlocks. And I thought, well, that's kind of silly. I asked the border officer what that was about, and he says that there's a padlock for every agency involved in that mountain. And that gives you an idea, well, how kind of a morass of decisions that have to be made just to go through that gate. And this is the type of thing they're going to run into when they start trying to clean brush. It's not so easy unless you start doing something from the federal government to make it easier. In California, it's fairly clear that PG&E did not keep an up-to-date inventory and accomplished schedule of vegetation removal. William Stewart, director of the Berkeley Forest Program at UC Berkeley, said in an email, "I think the Forest Service wants to make sure that they're sending the same signals to their staff and partners that judges are now sending to PG&E. Do proper power line clearance. It's going to be on the hook for billions of dollars of damages if they don't." And how many other agencies may be drug into this? Now, earlier this week, PG&E temporarily shut off power to as many as 48,000 customers across Northern California counties, which caused an extraordinary amount of trouble and damage and loss, and probably some loss of lives. I heard there were people who were on, oxygen concentrators. There may have been deaths from that issue. So, the preventive measure was a response to the high temperatures and gusty winds across the Sierra foothills. And the same thing is going to happen down here in the Southern California. We're in a heavy Santa Ana situation now, hot, dry, winds. When something starts, it's very hard to control it. And last year we had a lot of rainfall, so the vegetation was heavy, and now all of it is bone dry. And a single spark can start a massive fire. So, Tom Porter, Chief of Strategic Planning in the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, has cautioned that there's no easy way to reduce the risk of forest fires from power lines. Now, when the Farm Bill passed in December, Porter told the Sacramento Bee that the utility issue is a particularly complex one, and that it is. My son works on municipal projects and laying water lines, multiple things, water reclamation plants, so forth. And some of the most difficult water lines they had to lay was across ranch land. And that was probably due to farmers and ranchers greatly worried about their property and being oppressed by the big guys. A spokesman for PG&E said the utility was supportive of legislation to modernize and process for the removal of hazardous trees and vegetation near utility equipment on federal lands. It said, "We're still reviewing the proposed rule." PG&E has added it's continuing to work with the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Congress, Trump administration, and other partner utilities to deal with these issues to ensure implement in a manner consistent with the law. Now, Stewart of Berkeley said PG&E has also become much more proactive about clearing forest land near its power lines over the past year. Now, he said he's heard from many private landowners detailing how aggressively PG&E's contractors are now moving to reduce vegetation near power lines. And that contact between private and government is probably going to create some issues, even though it can be benefit to both sides for sure. But, people that own property in those areas are going to feel oppressed in some way. Again, will start the difficulties and lawsuits. So that will be an issue for all of them to sort out. How in the world are they going to clean up those areas under those power lines? And it's a difficult situation. To come in and say, well, just clear the brush is not so easy, without stomping all over somebody else's rights or issues, or to do it properly. But yes, something needs to be done. Government and utilities are behind the 8 ball for many years. So they're getting on the ball and hopefully getting something done for the benefit of all of us. But need to talk to those politicians, those congressmen and senators, and say, you got to give us a way to make these things easier to get done. And that's right where we're at right now. And today I'm sitting here in warm, dry, hot weather, and the wind's going to get worse. And as I said, it only takes a spark, and I'm seeing the landscape turn into moon dust. It's a metaphor, of course, but that's what it looks like when it's done burning. Virtually nothing is left. So there you are. Hopefully this legislation will accomplish something. So like and comment on my video, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. But get out there and make it a great day.